right.
So welcome back to Live with Zelda. And today I have a real treat for you. I have Dr. April Murdaugh. She is a financial planner with Woman to Woman Financial. So welcome, April.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much, Zelda.
Now, so I have to tell you, this is not the first time that April has been on my podcast. So several years ago, she was, I asked her if she'd come and be on the podcast. Back then I was recording in my home and, just wherever. And she was wonderful. And I forgot all about it because it's been a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And I was in my car listening to some podcasts, and the old podcast of you popped up into the radio. And I just was so mesmerized by it because the information you shared a couple of years ago was still true today and even more true. So I just thought, wow, I need to get April back on the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I love it. I love it. So first of all, for those of you who may not know, what does a financial planner do? And how in the world did you get into financial planning? Because I know this wasn't your first career.
No, it wasn't. So initially I was in higher education for many years, and then moved into logistics while I worked on one of my advanced degrees and got a lot of experience there, and then fell in love with this industry, particularly because I was at a pain point in my life. I'd lost everything 3 times. I was just really confused as to why I couldn't make better financial choices, why my financial situation didn't look the way I knew it should look. And so I started learning, and with that learning, I started teaching. So I literally started doing workshops in my church at first, and then in the libraries in town, and it just kind of morphed into, wow, I really love this. And so,
how did you learn? You said you started learning. How did you learn?
So my first introduction was Dave Ramsey, believe it or not.
Oh yeah, yeah. My son is a believer.
Yes. So I started listening a lot to him. I started reading. I fell in love with this lady called Mary Hunt. Her name. She wrote a series of books, Debt-Free Living. And then actually my therapist, because I literally was in therapy behind a lot of other things, but this was the crux of it. And she recommended this book called The Financially Confident Woman. And that book set me on the path to, oh my gosh, I got to get this right. And I started reading and studying, and then I started sharing with my group, within my peer group, and it morphed into workshops. And then I became known as, the money doctor. Oh my gosh, people help me, April, do this. And I just decided then at the end of 2018 that I would quit my full-time professor job, and I started my practice.
That's kind of scary.
Oh, yes. Very, very much so.
Like, okay, let's dive deep into it. It's all or nothing, right?
Yeah.
All or nothing. So do you mostly focus on women's financial issues, or do you also work with men, or is it mostly focused just on women?
So, of course, the draw are women, because women kind of do make the financial decisions or the decisions in the household. So I attract women, particularly because we are almost half of the population. I mean, right now we're sitting at 49% of the population, and it gets worse when we talk about single women. So divorcees and widows. And so a lot of the women that I have interacted with in my life, they didn't know. The very smart women just didn't understand. So the draw is women. But of course, if they have significant others, I would like to work with both of them. So everybody should be on the same page. I don't necessarily agree with working with one and not the other, and at least without both of them knowing that, hey, we're working together. And he may say, great, you can go ahead and work with her. I don't need it. Or most times, though, the husband and wife they do come on board and work together with me. And then I have some single male clients, some male clients who are married, who are like, look, I have a gentleman today, he wanted to get married. He knew this woman he was going to marry. He wanted to make sure his finances were okay for his future wife. So I'm not discriminatory in that regard, but the initial draw are the women, and then thereafter they bring their sons, their husbands.
Let me ask you this. When you mentioned, it's back in the day, I don't know if it's still relevant, you would know, is a lot of times women, I noticed, they didn't even, when you sign your taxes, the husband would just hand it to them and they would just sign it, not knowing what they were signing. They don't know what their financial situation is. And I'm thinking, when you mentioned people getting divorced and things of that nature, do these women do they not plan for these things? I mean, if you're planning on getting separated or married, like you said, you should know what your financial future is before you jump.
Well, yes. In an ideal world, you're right. We should know, but things are not ideal. Love, right, conquers all. So when you're in love,
it's like, he'll take care of me.
Right. Yeah, I'm good. And so even when women are married, a large portion of the women that I see say, my husband handles all of this.
Yes, that blows me away.
Yeah, and so they don't even, so one of the things that I do is even before you get married as a single woman, making sure your finances are together, that you have a clear picture of where you are going financially. And then if you come on board with someone, then I actually say, bring them in, let's all sit down and look at where you guys are. So to answer your question, it's not as prevalent now. Women are a little more savvy. The financial confidence level is still low, but the knowledge level is a little higher. So I see a lot of that, but they still feel clueless. And women who have high net worth households whose husbands, make a significant portion of the income really are in the blind a lot of times.
Wow.
Yeah,
that
they don't know sometimes.
Like, you got to know what's in the bank.
You should.
And where the money's going.
So
on your website that I looked at, which I loved her website.
Thank you.
So it says, little things add up. That's so true. So in thinking about little things adding up, let's talk about saving. And I know you're into the Dave Ramsey, and I've spoken to you before. My son is a real Dave Ramsey person. Mm-hmm. So talk to me about that, about saving. Like, when do you start saving? How does a single mom start saving? And when is it too early? When is it too late? I know for me, I was a little late because I was the single mom raising the two children with no support whatsoever. So it was hard. I was trying not to lose my house, so I was paying the mortgage, I was paying for the food, the groceries. Kids grow, they need clothing. So I was very late in saving, so it was a catch-up game. That's not good. So tell us a little bit about your philosophy on saving and when you start and how you do that when you're on a budget. And I have to admit, and this was a very wealthy person told me this, he goes, Zelda, everybody has a budget. Some are bigger and some are smaller, but everybody has a budget.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Knowing that, April, how do you talk to your customers about saving when they go, but I don't have any money? Well, they do, but how do they do that?
So yeah, that's a very good question. I get that all of the times. First of all, as a single parent myself, raising 3 alone over the last 15 years, like saving was like a bad word, right? Who could possibly save? But here's the thing. I had to change my mindset about that. Quick story. I had a client. She's actually a more mature lady. She came to me a few years before retirement, and she herself was not in a good financial situation. She didn't feel like she saved enough. And she said she would transfer like $25. You have that automatic transfer, $25 into your savings every week or every time she got paid, but then she'd wind up spending the money.
Ugh.
And I said,
I hear people do that all the time. They're getting Social Security, and I go, what are you doing with it? Aren't you saving it because you don't need it? You're still working. And they go, oh, I splurged. I'm like,
yep. Yeah. And so she really didn't have the savings that she felt like she needed. And I said, well, let's set a small goal. Let's just leave $5 in the account at the end of the month. So, a lot of times when we think about savings, we think about, I need to save $500. Oh, my bill's only this much, but, I have this extra discretionary money. I should be able to save $500 a month or $200 a month. And then they get frustrated with themselves when they can't. But it's like anything, even any journey. Like I'm on this weight loss journey right now, and we want everything quick.
Oh, gotcha.
We want it quick, right? But if I just do a little bit each day, if I just drink a little more water than I drank yesterday. So for me, working with my clients, I call it the no judgment zone. I don't care what you have saved when you come see me. I don't care. Let's start. And if we can't start where we feel you need to start. So
even if it's $5 a month, just start somewhere.
And you will feel so much more accomplished. And she did too. I think she sent me pictures. She was transferring her birth year into her account after a while. Now she has substantial savings. She had a death in her family. She was able to support that. So starting small is extremely important. Don't try to overwhelm yourself with this thing.
That's what I did. I can tell you, when I was like, I want to retire in a few years, and I have nothing to do that with. So it was just taking a little bit and saving it, saying I'm not touching it. And I would listen to friends say, hey, I'm spending it. And I'm like, y'all can spend your money. I'm not, I want to be able to quit one day.
Exactly.
So how does someone save when this is something that I'm seeing in the real estate market a lot right now is I have the young buyer, the first-time home buyer that wants to buy their starter home. And let me tell you, there's no such thing as a starter home anymore because of the home prices. It's ridiculous. So there's no starter homes. They're non-existent. Or I should say, they're there, but the investors with the deep cash pockets, they're buying them. Wow. So I'm seeing a lot of these so-called young millennials. They want to buy a home. They have student debt. And as I say, hey, look, right now, take advantage of it because student loan, the interest rates are forgiven at least till August. Yeah. So how do they save? How do they put money aside to pay for these student loans and save money to buy a house or whatever it is they may need? I mean, I see young couples, they don't even have health insurance because they can't afford the health insurance.
Yeah. It is a crisis. I mean, student loan debt is a crisis. I was reading a Wall Street Journal article a couple of years ago. It stated that the average student loan debt or the average age of a student loan debtor was like 66 years old now. Because parents and grandparents were taking out student loans for. So to answer your question about the young buyer, yeah, I mean, they have different programs out there to help. They have the income-based repayment plan. You know, they have different types of options based on the industry that you currently work on. So it is going to be very specific to your situation. Don't ignore student loans at all. But you can do both. You just have to look at the lifestyle that you're living.
So let me ask you this. So, and I don't know if this is your philosophy, Dave Ramsey's. I don't follow them. I don't. I just do my own thing.
Right.
I'm doing okay.
Right.
So if it's not broken, don't fix it. Mm-hmm. Right. But I heard at one time someone say to a student, you have the different loans and they have different interest rates. Pay the ones that have the smallest interest rate first, get that knocked out, and then go to the next one. And my brain said, that seems kind of odd. I think you should start, especially with no interest, start with the highest interest rate one, pay that one first, and then go down that way so that when interest rates kick back in, you're at the lower one. So tell me
So that is going to be specific to the individual, but ideally I do work with my clients to do things like that, and it's called the debt snowball method. And based on that method, if you have a 0% interest debt, whatever it is, if it's 0%, but you have something that's 25%, then I usually say, depending on the situation, pay the high interest debt off first. Now, if the 0% interest debt, I honestly would just throw that out of the equation right now and only deal with the debt that has interest attached to it. And based on that, I usually go smallest amount of debt owed to largest amount of debt owed. And if they are equal in par, like they're a few dollars off or a couple $1,000s from each other, then I may turn around and go, well, let's look at the interest first. Because if, you owe 20 on one and 22 on the next one, but the $20,000 one has a 10% interest and the 22 has a 6%, let's knock out the higher interest. Yeah. So it always depends on who it is, how the debt is structured. But I have a system that I use where I plug the debt in and it literally calculates it for me, calculations, and then it tells me which is smarter, which would save the client more interest and which would get them out of debt faster. So, and it also depends on the client, right? So some clients are like, oh, I can just take my time and pay that little $500 a month. I always have that. And then some folks are like, no, I need to get out. And so based on that, my calculations will reveal which would be the fastest for them and save them the most interest.
And this would apply not just to student loans. This is debt in general.
All debt.
So I mentioned student loans, but it really is for credit cards.
Credit cards, cars, homes. There are a lot of clients that want to pay off their homes. Anything that you owe money to, I do that with them and give them a picture of, okay, working together, this will be done by 2024. But if we do it just interest way, then it could be longer. It just depends.
So what are some ways that people can get their credit scores up?
Ooh, yeah. So I am not a credit
I know.
guru.
That's not a fair question, is it? Not a fair question.
Because people come and they're like, oh, I want to fix my credit. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, it could be a deeper problem. So, but the best way to get your credit score up, honestly, is the obvious. Just pay your bills on time.
Pay them on time. And that's what I tell people all the time. Pay your bills. Pay them on time. Don't be late. It's due today. That doesn't mean pay it today. It means pay it last week so that the money has time to hit the bank. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And, people stretch it. But, if you're within that 30-day window, then pay the debt off. Of course, the debt-to-income ratio is important. So we want to keep things at 30% or below.
Yes.
When we're talking about debt, especially when we want to go buy a house from you. Right?
Yes.
And so
it's like, don't run up all your credit. That's the biggest thing is I have to tell people when they're under contract and they want to go buy new furniture and this, I go, don't touch your credit. No. After you buy that house, after you've signed, you can go buy anything you want. And I've had that happen where a couple at the closing table, they pulled the credit like hours before the closing and they had opened up a credit card to buy a washer and dryer, and they were like, well, we didn't have it delivered yet. I'm like, but you opened up the credit card.
Yeah.
They were able to take care of it, but it was...
Patience is a virtue in those things. Just wait till you get the asset that you're seeking. And then, now don't go crazy, but then, you can
debt-free is good, but you do need to carry some debt in order to qualify for a loan. So I had a client once, the couple, thank goodness the wife had credit cards. The husband had nothing. Yeah. He had plenty of money. He saved money and he had a very high-paying job, but he goes, I'm debt-free. I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't look so great when you're going to buy something. You have to use your credit card, pay it off every month, but use it.
Right. Yeah, so, I got my background. I guess I need to put a disclaimer. I got my background with Dave Ramsey, but I'm not a Dave Ramsey. I don't teach his philosophy per se. I do believe that not having revolving credit sitting there every month to month, I do believe that you shouldn't. You should do everything in your power not to have that, because what if something happens? I've had stories after stories in my life where life happened, family member became ill, I needed to direct my resources to support them, and I had all this debt out. So I do agree with you, though, if you want to buy something, particularly take out a loan, you need to have an established credit line.
Yes.
So, and you need to have different credit lines. So not just cars, a home or some sort of installment or those things, but you should have a few different types of credit lines available. And use it and pay it off. I mean, if you get gas on the card and just pay the gas card off every month. And, and
use a card with points.
Yeah, that part.
Use a card with points.
So that way you can travel.
Yes.
And pay off
That's
your
my
debt.
goal. Exactly. It's like American Express and fuel.
Oh, yeah.
That's my fuel card. So you mentioned for unexpected things that happen. And we know life happens and things happen. And I know that you posted recently about a situation that happened, which is very sad, about the importance of having a will. And I'm going to preface that with saying that recently, my daughter and her husband, he earned a trip. He made President's Club, and so he earned a trip to Hawaii. And they were concerned with, well, gee, we'd like to go, but we have these 3 children, 2, 4, and 6. And they didn't have anyone to watch them. And as I mentioned before, I watch my grandchildren for 2 hours at a time. Well, I said, okay, I will watch your children for the 6 days and 6 nights.
Ooh, Grandma is amazing.
Yes, I am.
Yes, oh gosh.
I said, but there's one thing you have to do. I said, you have to have a will. Because they didn't. And here they have these children. They have a will now because that was the stipulation, and they wanted the trip. So now they have all their wills all together and their durable power of whatever it is. And so talk to us about that, because I know you also had a recent experience like that.
Yeah.
So can you share with us what that was about and the importance of wills and the types of
Oh
wills?
gosh, I could spend all day on this topic, honestly, just on the work that I do. But more recently, I have a neighbor, moved in 5 years ago next door to me, single dad, has a daughter. At the time, I want to say she was about 8 or 9. Grandma moved with him. She's older, 77, something like that, to kind of help.
But he was a young fella.
He's a young man, 47 years old, single dad, fresh out of the military, retired military, in IT, worked from home. Grandma came to kind of help him with the daughter. And 3 weeks ago, daughter's running outside, screaming and crying. My son comes out and runs in the house and tells me to wake up. It was early Saturday morning. She found her dad in his bed, dead. He had died in his sleep. And grandmother was there. It was a total mess. But one of the biggest issues was we didn't have any information on him. We didn't have couldn't find his driver's license. Couldn't find the name of the doctor that he had just seen.
Oh, wow.
Couldn't find any information at all. It was all in his phone. And so he's in the room, and we're in the house comforting the family, and the police are there. And, now the phones are ID, facial recognition, or thumbprint.
Yes.
And so, my other neighbor's like, well, can we just go in and get his thumbprint to unlock his phone? He's like, absolutely not. And so they took him, and his phone has never been opened. To this day, daughter can't go to the doctor because all her information is in the phone. She doesn't even know the name of the doctor that she goes to. Daughter suffers from severe insomnia for the last 3 weeks, so we can't get her to the doctor. Don't know what he wanted to do. Can't find still any of his insurance information. Grandma had to pay to cremate him, just, $1,900 because that's all she knew. She didn't know what else. Finally got a hold of it's just a mess because we cannot locate the documents. And so I've seen this happen time, and I have another client whose husband died, found him dead in the bathroom. I met with her in 2018, tried to get them to both come to work together. He dies. She can't find any of his paperwork. There's no will. There's no insurance information. Documents.
So where is the best place? Where is the best place to store it? Because what if, mine's on my computer. I've sent copies to my children so that they have them. But where do you store your, if you don't know, they didn't know who my attorney was that drew up these documents. So how is the best way to convey what you want in a situation like that?
Good question. So there are a couple of different ways. I have 3. One is, yes, what you did. Email them to your children because the email trail kind of sits there forever, right? So,
oh, my.
It's okay.
I had no idea that was even on.
Oh, that's
sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry, everybody.
So email them out to your children or to those parties that you trust, whoever your executors of your estate will be. So that's the first thing. Actually, the old-fashioned way, I may sound a little bit old-fashioned, but I have a safe in my house. It's
It's perfect.
Carry it. It's heavy. It's fireproof, waterproof. It has a key. And so I have that safe, and I've printed out all those documents, and they are in the safe. So all my insurance information, my birth certificates, passports, house information, my estate plan, all of that is in that safe.
And somebody has the code to get into that safe.
Exactly.
So
they have the code, and I have a key that is placed in a place that my children know. So every time I travel, hey, remember where everything is, because if something happens. So I think that is also, and then when I work with my clients, I have this online system called the Vault when we do financial planning. And the Vault, they actually put all their information in that vault. So something happens to one of my clients, they can contact me, and the parents, of course, would give them access to the vault.
So they have to tell somebody, hey, it's in the vault with Dr.
April.
Murdaugh.
Yep.
Yes.
And then they can go in there and access everything that they need. All their passwords, all their accounts. There won't be any secrets.
I always say it's not like the movies where there's the reading of the will. It's a surprise. No, my kids know, here's what it is. Here it is. Here's the will. Here's everything I want. So here you go.
I've literally planned out my life, my death. I've told my children exactly the way things.
You have to nowadays. It's not the movie. So No. So what kind of wills you have a living will? Because every time I go anywhere, they're questioning things like that. Doctor's offices, do you have a living will? So can you explain a little bit about a living will?
So a living will really has, and I'm not an estate attorney, but a living will has a lot to do with what you would want someone to do in the event that you weren't unable to make decisions for yourself, healthcare related decisions for yourself. It's almost like having a healthcare proxy, a healthcare surrogate. And so, or should they take extreme measures on your life? So my husband was brain dead for 6 days, and after day 2, the question was, are you going to take him off? So that living will kind of let those folks know
what you want,
and who is the one that's going to make that decision. So you identify the person. Durable power of attorney is very important. That's if you become also incapacitated, then they would have the right to handle all of your affairs, from decision making to banking to paying bills, all of that stuff. And a will, of course, is when you die.
Yeah.
And then something like that happens, as well as then if you have a trust, and those things become a little more complex. But having those 5 key documents, or at least the baseline, the foundation of an estate plan. When we start talking about probate and taxes and those things, there are different documents, the different types of structures that are needed, and I usually then send my clients out to an estate attorney that I partner with to do that.
So as you can see, a financial planner does a whole lot.
Yeah, we do.
They do a whole lot, and they can help guide you and refer you and help you create that budget that you might need for saving some money, setting aside, whether it's stocks or what real estate investments or whatever it may be. Yeah. You have to diversify and plan for the future, because it will be here before you know it.
Yeah, it's right now. And
it's right now.
We do a lot more. People think we just sit around with calculators, but we really help you organize your financial life so that you now can, and the future.
For the future. So hopefully we get to the point where we can retire, and then the money, the funds are there, and you don't have to stress about it. Because I know back in the day when I wasn't able to save, I stressed all the time about having enough money to be able to just even survive. So it's tough. So I thank you for your time, for coming back today. It's been very enlightening. I hope that you've all gotten a lot out of this. I always do when April comes to talk. But at the end of my shows, I like to ask you a few questions about you so that our audience can get to know a little bit about you on a personal level.
Okay.
So you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So what advice would you give your younger self?
Ooh, what advice would I give my... So, I don't know. Don't marry for love. No. Sometimes I think that I think really to not be so irrational with yourself, thinking so much with your heart. Relationships and stuff are really contractual, so really use your head and deal with that part first, and then get on to the other stuff. Okay. So I think, be about business first.
So what is a fun fact that people might not know about you?
So I have, I don't know if it's fun, but I have an addiction to movie theater popcorn.
Oh.
So on Saturdays, literally after church on Saturdays, because I celebrate Shabbat too, and after church on Saturdays, I go to the movie theater. It would normally be closed if I'm keeping the Sabbath, but it's open. And I go and get me a bucket of movie theater popcorn.
Do you go into the movies?
I go into the movie
so you go to the movies too?
No, I don't. I take it home.
Oh, you take it home?
I take it home, and I just relax on my couch with my dog and we eat popcorn.
That's the most unique one I've ever heard.
That's weird.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah,
that's fun.
So good.
That is
so
fun.
Bad.
So what's a talent that you don't have that you wish you had?
Ooh, a talent. So I was thinking about that. I really wish that, I wish I had been a runner in my younger days, like a long distance.
Okay, like cross country and all that. Oh, wow, yeah.
I really wish I'd been. I like running now, but you know, the older you get in your body.
Oh, please, I know.
Take that.
I lost 2 pounds when I watched all those kids.
I bet you running around.
I'm bending, stretching, moving. Not only was I sleep deprived, I could barely move. I was just like in such pain, and they have stairs, and I wasn't used to stairs. That's a whole nother subject. So
that's funny. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I wish
so there you go. So running, there you go. And one final one. Since you like movie popcorn, this is appropriate. So what's your favorite movie that if it comes on every time on the TV show or on television, you've got to stop to watch it? That one movie that gets you.
Yeah, so I was thinking that I'm not a big movie person, but the one is kind of off the wall. It's called Little Miss Sunshine.
I vaguely remember that one.
Yes, it's a spoof on pageants, beauty pageants.
Yes.
How parents enter their kids in beauty pageants. And they're on this trail to take this young girl who is probably not fit for a beauty pageant.
I vaguely remember that.
Yes, it was hysterical. And my children, that's the only movie my children bought me the DVD to, because we'll watch it and we'll crack up. It's hilarious.
That is so funny. That is so funny. Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for being on Live with Zelda. And I'm glad that you joined us this week. You know that we produce a new podcast and video them on my YouTube channel every other week. So look for more. I know that we've got an upcoming one talking to a banker with First Citizens. It's a family-owned company, and she's going to talk to us not about banking and lending, but why it's important to build a really good relationship with your banker. So that I know is an upcoming episode along with several others. You know, right now there's all these people are buying houses, and you're hearing about they're paying $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, even $100,000 over the price that is listed. So you're wondering, how are these homes appraising? So we're going to have an appraiser coming up who's going to address just that topic. So hopefully you'll join us. And if you know someone who is buying or selling a home the next year, I hope you'll remember I'm never too busy for your referrals. This is Zelda. You can find me on the web at gozelda.com.